course, I didn't mix these. I got all my large pieces towards the bottom, so I got to dig. Keep them all going the same way. That allows you to get more and more into the jar. You get more pickles per jar. Like this jar, if I can't fill it up with spears, I just grab a few of the circle discs I made and top the jar off like that. That gives you a good sample when you open the jar. Okay, we have the jars all stuffed. I take the hot brine and bring it over to me and spoon it into the jars to fill them up. Usually quart jars take about 2 cups of brine, pints take about a cup and a quarter. I bring it right up just below the top of the rim, so there's not a lot of wasted air space in there. Now we got to brine all in the jars. We'll set this back on the stove and keep it hot for the next batch. And then we have to put the lids on the jars yet. What I do is I use the boiling water that we're going to put it into. Take a couple of lids from the stack at a time and stagger them apart a little bit and put them in tongs. Then take it and you just dip those tongs in the boiling water for 10-15 seconds and heat those lids up and sterilize them. And these lids will be hot, so you got to be used to this or wear gloves while you're doing it if you can't handle the hot water. You figure this water is boiling, so it's over 200 degrees, these lids will get up to. Sometimes pickles stick up like that, you can push them down, or just when you screw the lid, they will push down. So get your lid setting on there. Make sure there's nothing setting on the glass seal to prevent them from sealing properly. Go ahead and bring them down with your ring. Then back them off just a little bit so the expanding air can push out of the jar. So I tighten them down and I back them off usually about 1/8 to 1/4 of a turn. So that's tightened down and we back it off a little. In the final jar for this batch. And you can feel where they start really tightening up and snugging down. You want to be just around that point, slightly above. So that'll allow the air to escape. Now using your jar lifter, we're going to place these into the boiling water. And of course, if you notice, the color of the pickles right now is green. And when they come out, you can tell they're cooked because they will turn to a more of a limey green color, which I'll show you as they're finishing. So we set all 4 jars in here. And cover this back up to get that water to a boil as quickly as possible. So here's our jars in there. They're into the boiling water. You see some bubbles are forming. You want it to come back to a good full boil. And with quarts, time it for about roughly 5 minutes. Okay, now while those are processing in the water and that, which will take a good about 10 minutes, they got to come back to a boil. And like I said, it's about 5 minutes on quarts, about 3 minutes on pints. But you want to watch the color of the pickles change all the way through from the bright green to the duller green. We'll go ahead and prep 4 more jars. That way when we pull these out of the water, we can put these in right away and save us a little bit of time. So we'll go through the process again of putting the grape leaves and the garlic and the hot peppers and dill into the bottom of the jar. And what I'll do is I'll add the hot brine but not put the lids on yet because the lids can seal just sitting here on the counter because that brine is so hot. Put a bit of garlic in that one. That's okay, I love garlic. Now if you want them even crispier, one thing you can do is add a pinch of alum. Now, the fresh ones out of the garden, I normally do not have to do this. Sometimes when you buy them from the store for pickling cucumbers and use them, or some that are a few days old, you need to put the alum in or they will not be crisp. And it's just a pinch you need in there. You don't need a lot. Now, to tell if your jars are cooked through and that, what you can do is you pull one up, and if you look at it, there's still some bright green here, so it's not quite done, and the water is just starting to boil. I usually make sure it gets a hard boil, and do that for at least 1 to 2 minutes. And if you overcook them, you'll end up with mushy, soggy pickles, so it's very critical on the timing of cooking your pickles. And like I say, let that bright green go out, make sure you have a hard boil, and give it about another minute or 2, and you'll be done. Okay, these have boiled for a bit more. So what I do is I fold the towel over into 4 parts, lay it on my hand and my arm. We're going to pull the hot jars out, set it on to here, and that prevents you from burning your arm. We use the pot holder with a rubber back. We'll grip the jar, we'll loosen it and tighten it real quick, which lets that expanded air out and helps the jar seal better. So we'll remove the lid of the boiling water. Like I said, this water is boiling, so be careful, you can burn yourself quite easily. Pull the jar up. Now you notice they're all dark green, or no longer dark green. They're cooked. There's bubbles coming up in the jar. I loosen and tighten real quickly, which lets the air escape. Grab our next jar out, put it on the towel, cover it, loosen it, tighten it, and you heard that big poof of air. Get this last jar out of here, and loosen and tighten, and those are all done. And while this water is really hot, we'll go ahead and grab 4 of the other jars for the next batch, and you just keep these batches rolling until you run out of jars. Back on there. Get this water back to a boil as quickly as possible and start the next batch going. And the others will sit over here. Let them cool down and seal. And you'll hear the jars make a pink when they seal. And they'll suck down pretty good. You should be able to remove the rings, turn the jar upside down, and not have the contents fall out. As you can see, the difference between these are unprocessed, a lot brighter green, versus the processed pickles over here, which are more of a limey green. Our second batch is now at a hard boil, and it's been at it for about a minute, so I'll be pulling that out shortly and putting the final batch of the evening in. Okay, so we get the lid off, get the towel ready, use a jar lifter and pull the first one out. Yes, they are cooked through, the color is good. So we put that in our hand, loosen and tighten. And you can see the juice does come out. That means that all the air has been pushed out. That's a good thing. That's why you try to keep them level, because you'll let air back in. If you tilt them, it'll just pour the juice out the side. So always make sure they're level in your hand before you twist that lid loose. As you can see, the lid is puffed up right now, and as I do that, that lets it flatten out. As soon as it cools, that lid will pink down and seal. So those 4 are out. And check our other jars, make sure they're not over tightened. That one was. And get them all snug and get them back into this water. And there we go, our final batch is in, and we have 2 batches out, cooling down.